People kind of made fun of, like, oh my god, you're doing this skill build here, you're getting this item, why are you picking that character in this composition? And
I made a video about this well over a year ago, and I kind of want to reiterate some of the stuff in that video.
Everything that you must do, otherwise you're not playing the game right, otherwise you're doing it wrong.
Because of its growing popularity, the Raylo fandom quickly became more and more elitist. And if you've watched my channel before, you know where this is going already.
Elitism. You may have heard this term get thrown around a bit. I mean, in the current climate, you needn't look far to see it in practice. Just stroll into your local zoo and there it is in 4K for your entertainment. But whenever the topic of elitism and gaming comes up, I only ever see it be referred to in a singular way. Now, what is that version of elitism?
Are you fucking high as fucking shit? Why are you in here?
Oh, right, that one. The toxic nature of a lot of FPSs and competitive games of course nurtures this sort of ideology in players. I mean, let's say you're in a game of the popular first-person shooter Among Us, CSGO, and the top scoring player on your team is someone who worships the AWP and sacrifices his credit card to Fnatic. They also happen to be yelling at the Gold 2 player for not buying a defuse kit and purchasing an MP5, even though this was an eco round and he's the only one that full bought and lost all the gear last round.
Считается Batman!
Нет, так не считается Batman.
Shut the fuck up, sucker mother!
I'm getting ahead of myself, but that right there is as basic of an elitist I believe you can find. These are the type of players that expect you to easily be able to pull off a clutch, 1 HP, 1 bullet, 720 no-scope headshot, knife throw, across the map featuring Dante for Devil May Cry and Knuckles, and anything less is worthy of being kicked from whatever lobby they think they've colonised. And if you've ever come across one of these guys assaulting their Blue Yeti to trash talk you, then congratulations, you've earned the title of Internetter. Here's a commemorative Nintendo eShop gift card and a restraining order. However, in my honest opinion and my own experience, elitism can definitely branch out and take place in more environments than simply just in a game of Rocket League, Apex Legends or Hyperscape, more particularly in the community surrounding a game or game series. Case in point being the Sonic fanbase. In my 472 years on this planet, I've noticed particular patterns in communities that involve elements of elitism heavily. In fact, I guess you could say I've come up with a mini sort of theory. A game theory! I believe that there are two distinctive types of elitism in the gaming scene, that which I coin individual elitism and a second I call combined elitism. They're working titles. Individual elitism I touched upon earlier, aka the I fucked your mum psychosis, a truly remarkable specimen which can be very similar to that of toxicity, only difference is that toxic people aren't usually good at whatever game they're in. But I'm not going to dwell too heavily on this, especially since if you've played this definitely not oversaturated and played out genre, you'll know exactly what I'm referring to. I'll mostly be concerned over the severe stage 4 elitism virus in the Sonic community, but I will be bringing in some extra knowledge that I've gathered from other fandoms. So to get back on track, what is combined elitism? It's fucking self-destructive. That's quite honestly the best way to put it, because if you've spent any amount of time in a mainstream or occasionally indie fanbase, you'll see examples of it at some point. So, listing off each symptom of dictitis. Symptom number 1 stems solely from a game series, where the victim believes that Game X is better in every way to Game Y. Now before you start ragging me off for being a hypocrite, allow me to explain to you that saying you don't like a game is a lot different to outright telling people that a game is bad and that their opinion is the second coming of Aristotle. The Sonic fanbase is quite well known for being a severely divided community, and understandably so, as it feels as if the franchise has tapped into almost every genre humanly possible in the past 30 years. You want old school? Voila. You dig a more Lovecraftian approach? Bam. Racing? A lot of that. Bestiality? Bippity boppity boo. A living concept of this would be the storybook slice of the fandom. Wait, never mind. I meant the Black Knight fandom, sorry. Secret Ring fans don't exist. This is a relatively tight community of people that share the opinion that Black Knight is one of the best games in the whole series. The content that arises from this sub-community I've noticed tends to be filled with a lot of artwork, fanfiction, and above all else, shipping. But rest assured, that's coming later, as that's a beast of a community with its own bloody segment. But other than the love of the JRPG type setting and characters, a select few in the mini fandom share the opinion that this is the ultimate Sonic experience. Some are more passive in this stance, but there is of course that louder minority that preach night of the wind out of their windows. This is the type of thing I'm talking about, as being on this high horse of believing that what you like is the definitive best and closing yourself off to other opinions only creates more of this community-wide divide. And this isn't just mutually exclusive to Sonic. What about another IP like Tomb Raider? I'd imagine people could argue for hours on end about which iteration of Lara Croft is the best, whether it be the polygonal classics or the newest cinematic trilogy. And then you might have those that say Go is the best.
It's just like super hot, Jesus.
Far Cry. The 5th game is very divisive amongst the core fanbase and can spark into heated arguments over Hope County and the Seed family compared to Vast on the Rook Islands and the Jackal in the African wilderness. Metal Gear Solid... Actually, never mind, this is a closed case. But to be completely honest, it can get worse than this, since, you know, the whole modern versus classic debate just exists. 2011, the lore inconsistency suddenly went haywire with the introduction of Classic Sonic, who is now his own separate entity, apparently. While I'm sure that the classic versus modern debacle has been raging since way before Generations was released, it's certainly gained more and more prevalence since the title dropped. You'll commonly see places such as Twitter used to impose onto people which era is the best, and I kid you not, I've seen people get into arguments over the density of Classic Sonic's arms. As you can see, only the most intelligent are allowed in this community. And this of course falls under the bracket of combined elitism. When an opinion begins getting spread around, there will of course be debates on separate parties, it's unavoidable. But the scale of it, particularly in the Sonic fanbase, becomes the problem as all the elitists make it more like a toxic controversy. And it even extends to each corner of the fandom, some more than others, and unsurprisingly, Twitter is the patient zero for this strain of the deadly elitivirus. And what's the problem with this? It consumes the community from the inside out, and the barriers between each mini fandom begin getting more toxic as the topic begins getting more and more heated. A comparison can be made with literally every game series under the sun, but in particular fandoms like Assassin's Creed and Call of Duty have had similar problems in the past and even now, where fans continue to debate on which games or eras were the best. Also, if you say modern Assassin's Creed is better than classic, take the needle out of your arm and wake up. It even gets to the point where consistency is frowned upon in the community at this point. So yes, enjoy what you want to, but don't preach that it's the best thing ever conceived, because it will only make things worse in the long run, and unless you want to join the Council of Twitter Twits, it's best to merely express your thoughts, not project them as the almighty truth like some fucking Black Dahlia case clue. Also, this high and mighty opinion having is resident in a lot of content creators, to the point where even news coverage and predictions get this elitist Cove paint. And if you ever wonder why the Sonic YouTube scene is so hated, this is a majority issue that is more commonplace than it really should be. Symptom 2. Patient begins turning hostile towards others in its vicinity over dissent of le video game. Or, you know, criticism of the IP gets under their skin. This will most likely end up being an add-on to the previous point, except this time I'm looking at a more extreme case, and because I need to pad the runtime. It's normal for people to get upset if someone says ill words of something that you love, it's natural instinct, but there's a fine line between taking criticism and falling for the bait. So let's cover ourselves in some chronon radiation and go back to 2015. Guaranteed heart from me if you know what game I referenced. Undertale! Unless you've been living under a very dense rock since 2015, then you'll probably already be familiar with what Undertale is. The infamous venture of a guy that liked the Earthbound series who made a game that would infest the internet in a matter of weeks. A lot of people have made case studies on the Undertale fandom and the way that it functions, mostly trying to dissect how the game got so popular and what caused the fandom's crazed mindset. And this is down to many factors, of course, one of which I believe is, you guessed it, a form of elitism. But to best understand its roots, it's probably ideal to understand what led to it in the first place. The power of this indie RPG isn't from the gameplay or its approach to the kills/spares style. Both concepts and the genre as a whole have been done before and more fleshed out within plenty of other RPGs like Chrono Trigger, Dragon Quest and Final Fantasy. I mean hell, because of the rise of games like Minecraft and Terraria, pixel graphics were also becoming commonplace in the market at the time of release. Instead, it's the characters and the world they live in that drove this game to the popularity it has today. These aren't just slabs of text telling you to go do this because that's what the game devs want you to do. You feel a sort of weight from each interaction that compels you to grow fond of these fictional beings in a surprisingly short amount of time, some more than others. Within the first hour of the game, you will have completed the tutorial and have a somewhat lingering feeling of guilt sitting in your stomach with your brief interaction with Toriel. In less than an hour, you get the impression that she's a caring mother figure who carries some sort of scar from her past and as a result clings very tightly onto you in a metaphorical and physical sense to keep you safe from the rest of the underground. This is also backed up by little bits of environmental storytelling throughout Toriel's home, even leaving a pie at your bedside if you decided to doze off after getting harassed for 7 hours straight in a siege lobby.
You should not only uninstall your game, you should give your computer to a fucking local shelter or library, you fucking cuck! Go read a book!
The writing and world of Undertale is the key. Take that away and it's just another generic RPG with a typical combat system. So Toby Fox had to get the characters down perfectly, and it worked. Perhaps a little too well. The player base, as we all know, began growing very attached to all the characters, big and small, and went ahead with their fan creations. Some were creative fan fictions, and others, well, they got fucking weird. As this raged on, a lot of stands began surrounding the game and would proceed to spite, harass, and even physically harm others for their works and opinions on Undertale. Undertale. Now this is all well and good, you might ask, but how does this relate to Sonic? Well, that's because it's a very similar situation. We're losing the subs, refer back to Sonic again. Instead of the characters having intricately detailed personalities, these are characters that have been around for 30 years. In that time, people have been with Sonic through his highs and lows, seen him change and develop, so naturally, a lot of fans, myself included, have grown a somewhat unbreakable bond with the Hedgehog. And by extension, some particular fans take the high ground and take criticism of the series as if it were a critical hit in the back. Suffice to say, I don't think it would be the wisest idea to follow Undertale's footsteps and become as elitist as possible just by following pure logic and avoiding a hive mind. Although, with the slop getting dished out to the masses on social media, I'd estimate we're about halfway there already. Symptom 3, Gamer Guide, moving on. A large majority of fans that dedicate themselves to making shifts between characters are a relatively mixed bag. If you conform, then they'll be super nice, charming, welcoming, exhibiting sociopathic tendencies, what have you, but a majority of the time I see hardcore shippers get overly defensive when somebody thinks that Sally is a better candidate than Amy, or if they just so happen to be breathing wrong. Once again, this is probably the loud minority, but this particular minority, well, it certainly isn't small in the slightest. This generally stays the same amongst all franchises in all forms of media, like for example the shipping scene in fanbases like Star Wars and people's apparent obsession over the Jurassic World cast.
This wasn't even a good film.
Regardless, this still outlines the bulk of the problem that I keep repeating, except this time people actually put this shit before their own well-being and expect there to be some grand reward for them. I could scavenge the internet for mere hours and come back with enough material to create an encyclopedia on the various fanfictions of Son Amy, Son Ado, Sylvain and Son Ali that lie in wait online. Not 2 minutes in and I can't even show you the rest of this image, but I think you can work out what's going on here. I think I need to take a break from the internet, but I lack the time and mental capacity to endure such an endeavour, so I'll just cut to the chase. Take your average fangirl and dose them up with 10 shots of surplus morphine, essentially an elitist like discussed earlier in this hive mind, but now add in this factor of fantasising over a ship that in the right setting can just be seen as cute, harmless and adorable. It extends beyond the realm of elitism and can now threaten the way they act as a person, as the shipping community appears to have this effect on people, to put it lightly. And I realise that I may be talking out of my league here, as I've most likely only just dipped my toes on the surface of this no man's land, but when the front for this community tends to be filled with a cult-like following, you can at least forgive me for getting these ideas. It's also worth mentioning that the sexual tension in the fandom is also one of the most infamous parts of it. I'm not even going to bother explaining to you the kind of problems that this sort of press would cause. Piece the puzzle together yourself, Norman Jaden. So here's the basic foundation of it. Elitist, fantasizing fanbase, infamous for the wrong reasons, negative appearance to the brand as a whole. Behold the trinity of a grey future run by the Covenant. Again, this can apply to any fanbase. The newest Star Wars trilogy fandom, yes, it does exist, got destroyed internally in part by cultures like this, along with the truckloads of shit the movies themselves came packed with. And even on YouTube with creators, stan followings are becoming more commonplace, whether the creator wants them or not, which is just a tad bit frightening. All I'm saying, Sonic fanbase, it feels as if we're on the tipping edge, so maybe just don't conform to these sorts of hive minds and actually think for yourself for once, because that's going to be much more beneficial than just acting like you're a one of us. Despite the fact that Sonic has been the main focus, this mini gaming theory can apply to many different fandoms on different mediums. I mean, for Christ's sake, some definitely need this directed more to them, or perhaps a cease and desist, who knows. The big three virtues of this combined elitism theory I got happen near daily everywhere in the mainstream franchises, and some are still stuck in the gutter, and to be honest, I don't have much hope for those at the bottom of the food chain. But maybe, just maybe, my favourite franchise of all time could reverse its wrongdoings overnight and my inbox is flooded again. How about that? It's a part of the reason why I worry for new franchises to take off, because I've seen what's happened before, and history as we all know it repeats itself, even if we want to forget about the past. One such game appears to be the up-and-coming Resident Evil 8, which is following in the footsteps of its older brother 7, which distanced itself from the older style that the games in the franchise were so well known for. Now if you watch me and other Sonic tubers in the scene, you'll know exactly what separating a game series into different categories will lead to. Sometimes separation and evolution is needed to better a series, I'm not going to deny that. However, when a game series starts diverging so much in an outlandish way in a convoluted whatever, the end result will not be pretty. And where there's divide, there is almost certainly combined elitism at its core. In conclusion, fanbase bad, the end.